The other day, I was walking through a quiet residential pocket of Tokyo's Setagaya Ward just as the sun was setting. And I noticed an elderly woman, I mean, she had to be at least 90, slowly navigating this really steep flight of stairs with 2 heavy bags of groceries.
Right.
And just as I moved to offer help, a man stepped out from a doorway to take the bags. He looked to be in his early 60s, gray hair, but still physically capable.
Okay.
But what struck me wasn't the help itself, it was the silence.
That's interesting.
There was no thank you, no I've got it, mom, nothing. Just a heavy, practiced handoff.
Like it's been done 1,000 times.
A million times. And the man, he didn't look like he'd just come home from work. He looked like someone who hadn't left that apartment in 30 years.
Wow.
He had that pale, preserved look of a person who exists entirely within 4 walls.
I know exactly the look you mean.
And that silent transaction, I realized, is the new face of what sociologists are calling the 90-60 problem.
Yeah. We've been talking about the 80-50 crisis for years.
Exactly. For years, Japan obsessed over the 80-50 crisis. 80-year-old parents supporting their 50-year-old shut-in children.
But the clock kept ticking.
It just kept ticking. Those children never left, and now they're entering their senior years themselves. Their entire survival is tethered to the dwindling pensions of parents who are nearly a century old.
It's a demographic ticking time bomb.
But it isn't going off with a bang. It's happening in total polite silence.
And that's maybe the most fascinating part, isn't it? How the system adapts.
It's what's truly fascinating, how Tokyo has adapted to this. In any other part of the world, this would look like a societal collapse.
A total failure.
Right. But here, it feels like a masterclass in engineering. The city has become a high-tech life support system for the solitary.
A prosthetic, in a way.
A prosthetic family, a prosthetic community. You see it in the 24-hour convenience stores that have replaced the family kitchen and the rental family agencies.
Where you can literally hire a daughter to visit you.
Just to keep up the appearances of a normal life. It's wild. And it raises this haunting question. Is the death of the traditional family actually a failure?
Or is it an evolution?
Or is this the final evolution of the modern city, a place so efficiently designed for the individual that we finally succeeded in making other people optional? As Tokyo hits its so-called loneliness peak in 2026, we aren't just looking at a Japanese crisis. We're looking at a controlled experiment in how a civilization chooses to fade away, quietly, cleanly, and perfectly alone.
That silence you observed it's the defining acoustic of this entire phenomenon. It's a heavy systemic silence.
Right. It's not just one quiet family.
And we have to be really precise about what we are analyzing here. We aren't just looking at social withdrawal or, loneliness in some abstract emotional sense.
It's more structural than that.
We are dissecting a distinct economic and architectural system that has evolved specifically to sustain that withdrawal.
To unpack this.
We need to unpack the 90-60 problem, not as a collection of sad stories, but as a rigid economic engine. We need to examine how the urban fabric of Tokyo, and also Seoul, has been physically re-engineered to accommodate the atomized individual.
And the big picture.
And finally, yes, we have to address the geopolitical strategy at play, the conscious decision to accept population decline rather than, say, dilute the cultural sphere with mass immigration.
Economics, because that handoff on the stairs, that really represents a financial transaction that's happening in, millions of households?
Millions. It's the core of the issue.
To really understand the mechanics, we have to look at a specific case. There's this 92-year-old woman, Harumi, and her 64-year-old son, Kenji.
And this isn't an outlier. This is the archetype.
It's the template. So every morning, Harumi walks to the local convenience store. She buys 2 identical soft food bento boxes.
2. Oh.
One is for her, and the second is for Kenji. And Kenji hasn't stepped past the threshold of his bedroom since the early 1990s.
30 years. And this is where the macro economy, the big national picture, crashes directly into the microeconomy of that one apartment.
Yeah.
Well, Harumi's national pension is structurally designed for one thing: to fund her own end-of-life care.
Right. Nursing homes, medical bills, maybe just buying things at the local shop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Circulating that money back into the local economy through small consumption.
It's being diverted.
It's being completely diverted into a closed loop. That pension is acting as a life support system for Kenji.
For the ghost.
For the ghost resident. Yes. So you have this massive pool of pension wealth, And it is massive in Japan, being trapped in a household vacuum.
So it's not circulating, it's not building anything or driving growth.
It's doing the opposite. It sustains a state of suspended animation for a person who produces nothing and consumes only the bare minimum required for biological survival. It's an economic black hole replicated in millions of homes.
And the timeline here is just so critical to grasp. The 80-50 problem, which felt like a crisis back then.
In the 2010s, yeah. That was the dominant narrative. Parents in their 80s, children in their 50s.
But the demographic math is just relentless, isn't it? The problem didn't get solved.
No, the participants just got older.
And now we have the 90-60 reality. The children are now senior citizens themselves. They are entering the age where they would traditionally be retiring.
Except many of them never even started working in the first place.
It's a generation that missed the first act and is now arriving at the final curtain.
And the scale of this is, I think, consistently underestimated. And there's a good reason for that. It's about how the data was collected.
Right, the official numbers seemed low for a while.
Very low. Around 2019, the Cabinet Office released surveys estimating there were about, 613,000 hikikori aged 40 to 64.
Which is still a huge number.
It's a huge number. But clinical experts, people on the ground like Professor Saitu Tamaki, they argue the real number is likely over 2 million.
Over 2 million. Where's that discrepancy coming from?
The survey design. For decades, government surveys simply cut off at age 39.
Why?
Because social withdrawal was framed as a youth issue, a problem of troubled teenagers or young adults who couldn't find a job. The state was effectively blind to the aging of this population.
They just aged out of the data set.
They aged out of the data set. So you have millions of people, and we now know that at least half of them are middle-aged or elderly, existing completely off the official radar. It was a hidden epidemic.
And you mentioned that preserved look in the intro, that the man on the stairs looked like he hadn't left the apartment in 30 years. That observation, it aligns perfectly with what researchers call the arrest of social time.
While biological time continues, Kenji is 64 years old, his social maturation, his psychological development, it stopped cold the moment he withdrew from society.
So you end up with a 60-year-old who is, for all intents and purposes, still 25.
Or younger. You often find men in their 60s who still dress, speak, and emotionally regulate like they are in their late teens or early 20s.
Because they haven't been weathered.
They haven't been weathered by the external friction of society, the daily commute, the office politics, the compromises of relationships, the successes, the failures, all the things that shape an adult identity.
They're physically preserved, but socially atrophied.
And this leads directly to what some call the immaturity trap. Parents, often out of a complex mix of guilt, love, and sheer habit, continue to parent these 60-year-old men as if they were still teenagers.
Protecting them.
Always protecting them. They hide the financial realities to avoid causing distress. They don't talk about their own declining health. They maintain the fiction that everything is okay.
But that protectionism, that silence, it just creates a catastrophic endpoint, doesn't it? I read about a financial planner, Hatanaka Masako, who've been very vocal about this.
She has. Her work is crucial here.
She argues that parents must break that silence, that it's the only way. They have to present the raw data to the recluse.
It's a brutal conversation. She advises them to literally sit down with the bank statements.
And say, we have X amount of yen left. At your current rate of spending, we survive for 3 more years. If I die tomorrow, this income stops completely.
That conversation is the breaking point for so many of these families. It shatters the illusion of infinite safety that has persisted for decades.
It introduces mortality into a situation that has felt timeless.
And when that conversation doesn't happen, or when it happens too late, or when the biological reality just catches up, that's when we see the absolute darkest manifestation of the 90-60 problem.
The abandonment of corpses.
The abandonment of corpses. We have police reports, more and more of them, of individuals who, upon the death of the parent, hide the body.
Not out of malice, you said, but out of...
panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. They wake up one morning, their 93-year-old mother hasn't woken up, and their first thought isn't grief, it's terror.
Because they know that a death certificate stops the pension transfer.
It stops everything. It's a survival crime. The home suddenly becomes this gothic horror scene where the living person is now held hostage by their absolute financial dependence on the dead.
Oh, it's hard to even imagine that level of desperation.
And it's essential, I think, for anyone trying to understand this to contextualize this lost generation.
Yes, because it's easy to just blame the individual. say they were lazy or weak.
And society does that. The blame game is very common. Society blames the parents for spoiling them, or it blames the individual for not trying hard enough.
But the structural issue is the real cause.
These are individuals who simply chose not to work. The vast majority of them came of age during the employment ice age.
This was after the economic bubble collapse in the early 90s.
Japan's famously rigid lockstep recruitment system meant that if you missed that single hiring window when you were 22, fresh out of university, the ladder was pulled up.
There were no second chances.
Yeah.
No on-ramps.
No on-ramps. It wasn't like in the West where you could, take a few years off, find yourself, and then get back into a career track. In Japan, once you stepped off that track, you were off for good.
The structural failure of the labor market created this class of people who fell into the basement of the economy.
And they never found the stairs back up. They retreated to their rooms, and the years just started to pile up.
And this brings us right to the second pillar of this whole deep dive.
The urban machine.
The city itself. Because you simply cannot have millions of isolated individuals like this without a city that is, in some way, engineered to support and enable them.
The city becomes a co-conspirator in the withdrawal. We need to look at how Tokyo and Seoul have mutated to become these prosthetic families.
A prosthetic family. Let's look at this universal solo living era through the lens of another archetype. A young salaryman. He's living in one of those smart micro studios in Shinjuku, and his living situation is just a masterpiece of frictionless isolation.
It's designed for it.
Completely. His apartment is no larger than a big walk-in closet. The bed folds into the wall to create floor space.
Right.
He orders his morning coffee via an app that requires zero verbal interaction. He picks up his dinner from a heated locker in the lobby of his building.
No delivery person, no thank you, no small talk.
He hasn't had a genuine face-to-face conversation with a neighbor in 3 years.
And Sato, as you say, he represents the standard now, not the exception. The numbers are staggering.
Nice.
In Seoul, single-person households reached 39.3% in 2023. Nearly 4 in 10 households are just one person.
In Tokyo.
Tokyo's on the exact same trajectory. It's projected to hit 40% by 2026, which is just around the corner.
So you have this incredible density of solitude. And that has to drive a very specific architectural response.
It has to. In Seoul, the housing crisis has pushed people down a kind of housing ladder. It started with a shift away from the Junant system.
Can you explain Johnsy for a second?
Sure. Junese was a system where you'd give your landlord a massive lump sum deposit, maybe 50 or 60% of the property's value. You'd live there rent-free for a couple of years, and then you'd get the entire deposit back when you left.
And the landlord just invests that money.
The landlord invests it. But with low interest rates and economic shifts, that system started to fall apart. So there's been a huge shift to WOLS, which is just a standard monthly rent system like in the West.
Which means housing becomes more expensive on a month-to-month basis for the tenant.
And that economic pressure pushes people further down the ladder into places like goshuans.
Goshuans. These were originally, what? Steady cubicles.
Tiny cubicles for students cramming for the incredibly competitive civil service exams. They were never meant for long-term living.
But they've evolved into permanent housing for this new solitary class.
Permanent housing. And we are talking about spaces that are often just 7 square meters.
7 square meters. That's the size of a king-size bed and a small path next to it.
It's barely enough space to lie down and stand up. And until very, very recently, a lot of these units had no windows.
No windows.
The fact that the city of Seoul had to pass new legislation mandating a window and a minimum of 7 square meters just highlights how oppressive and dire these spaces have become.
It's a city legislating for basic human dignity in housing.
Yes. But the market is adapting in other ways, too. We're now seeing this boom in corporate co-living brands.
Like Episode or Local Stitch.
Right. And what they're attempting to do is to productize community.
What does that mean to productize community?
They build these large complexes with hundreds of tiny private cells, your 7 or 8 square meter bedroom, but then they have massive, beautifully designed shared amenities.
Shared lounges, gyms, movie rooms, cafes.
Exactly. It's a calculated attempt to manufacture social connection for people who are, by their very structure of life, completely isolated. It's a subscription model for neighbors.
A productized version of a family or a neighborhood. And Tokyo's approach is, it seems even more radical in its core design philosophy.
Agree. It's less about creating artificial community and more about leveraging the city itself as the community.
I read about architects like Takahashi Ippei, who designed something called the apartment house.
A fascinating project.
The idea is that the individual unit is stripped of its self-sufficiency. So one unit might just be a bathroom, another might just be a tiny kitchen and a tatami mat.
The architectural thesis there is profound. It's that you do not live in your apartment. The entire city is your living room.
The local sento, the public bathhouse, that's your shower.
The 24-hour convenience store, the konbini, that's your pantry and your kitchen. The tiny bar down the street is your lounge.
This is where that concept you mentioned, negative freedom, becomes really tangible.
As the infrastructure provides freedom from interaction. You don't need to negotiate with a roommate or a spouse about what to eat for dinner.
The convenience store provides 1,000 options, instantly and silently.
You don't need to ask someone to be quiet. Your tiny, isolated pod is your own silent sanctuary. It's the freedom from the small, daily frictions of human coexistence.
And the convenience store, the konbini, it really is the central nervous system of this entire lifestyle.
It's everything. It's the post office, the bank, the pharmacy, the ticket office, the restaurant. It allows for a life of total desocialized autonomy.
A life where you never have to ask anyone for anything.
And this is all supported by a cultural framework. It's propped up by concepts like teitmei.
The public facade, the social mask.
Yes. In a city of millions, of course, extreme politeness, reading the air, it acts as a social lubricant. But it also acts as a shield.
A shield that allows people to be physically compressed on a subway train.
Shoulder to shoulder, pressed against strangers.
While remaining completely socially hermetic, isolated in their own bubble.
It creates this incredible paradox where the city is hyper-efficient, clean, and safe, but it'd also be socially sterile. And that design, that efficiency, it validates the withdrawal of the 90-60 generation.
Wow.
If the city provides everything you need without ever demanding human contact, the recluse, the hikikomori, has absolutely no incentive to reintegrate.
The environment conspires with the pathology.
The city becomes the ultimate enabler.
Which leads us, really, to the final macroscopic layer of all this.
The geopolitical choice.
Because we have these aging populations, we have shrinking workforces, and we have an urban design that actively encourages isolation. The math just suggests the system should collapse.
It should, unless there is a massive influx of new people.
Immigration. It seems like the obvious logical lever to pull.
It does, and yet the approach to that lever is what completely distinguishes the future of Japan from the future of, say, South Korea.
There's that story, that very telling example from a traditional textile village on the outskirts of Kyoto.
Yes, it's a perfect miniature of the national mindset.
So the village weavers are all, what, in their mid-70s?
The craft, this ancient skill, is on the verge of total extinction because there are no young Japanese apprentices.
And so it was proposed to bring in foreign apprentices to learn the trade, to keep it alive.
And the village elders flatly refused.
Why?
They said they would rather choose to let the craft die with them than to dilute the atmosphere of the village or introduce cultural friction.
They chose a clean extinction over a messy transformation.
A clean extinction over a messy transformation. That decision valuing aesthetic dignity and cultural silence over raw survival is the elegant decline strategy writ large.
It's a prioritization of cultural homogeneity over economic vitality.
An explicit one. And Japan, as a nation, is effectively doubling down on this Galapagos strategy.
The Galapagos meaning evolving in isolation.
Exactly. The government is betting heavily on automation, on AI, on robotics to fill the massive labor gap rather than importing people.
And the fear, as shown in public opinion polls, it's not what you'd expect, is it?
It's not. In many Western countries, the anti-immigration argument is about jobs. They're taking our jobs.
But unemployment in Japan is negligible.
It's incredibly low. The fear isn't that foreigners will take jobs. There are more jobs than people. The fear is the disruption of public order.
The disruption of the silence.
The disruption of the silence. The fear is that the cultural other will not understand the high context, unwritten rules of Japanese society. The intricate trash sorting, the queuing etiquette, the quiet on the trains. They fear the system's harmony will be broken.
And so you have to contrast this with South Korea.
It's a night and day difference in policy, if not entirely in public sentiment yet.
South Korea is pivoting.
It has to. It's facing a fertility rate of 0.84.
Which is a world record low. That's not even replacement level. That's extinction level.
It is a demographic cliff. The state has realized it cannot automate its way out of extinction. You can't have a robot kindergarten teacher in the same way. We're seeing a rapid, and I mean rapid, expansion of their employment permit system for foreign workers. And as the scholar Kan Kimura points out, this shift was driven by a really unique political alignment.
What was the alignment?
You had progressive groups and unions supporting foreign labor as a human rights issue, arguing for better conditions and protections.
Okay.
And at the same time, you had conservative business lobbies supporting it for purely economic reasons. They needed the labor. So both the left and the right found a reason to agree.
Which has allowed Korea to open its doors much faster than Japan.
They are accepting the social messiness that comes with demographic transformation because the alternative is to simply vanish.
So to put it crudely, Japan is choosing the robot and Korea is choosing the immigrant.
Essentially, yes, that's the fork in the road they've reached. Japan's government, they enact these different dimension measures, child allowances, financial incentives for families.
But the internal analysis shows that's not working.
The bureaucrats know. The evidence-based policy analysis shows these have, at best, a marginal impact on the birth rate. It's a facade.
The silent consensus.
The silent consensus is that they are not trying to reverse the decline anymore. They are managing it. They are overseeing a society that is choosing to fade away quietly, maintaining its high-trust, low-conflict social order until the very end.
It's a profound, deliberate trajectory. It's not an accident. So when you tie it all together, we see the 90-60 household as the microscopic unit of this grand national choice.
The reservation over renewal.
We see the city Tokyo, Seoul, as the intricate mechanism that makes this prolonged isolation not just possible, but comfortable.
Clean, efficient, and totally atomized.
And finally, we see the nation closing its borders to ensure that the silence is never disturbed.
It forces you to completely rethink your definitions of success and failure, doesn't it? To a Western observer, this looks like a heartbreaking crisis of loneliness.
But from the inside, maybe it's viewed as a triumph of order, a triumph of control.
That's the unsettling question at the heart of it.
And that brings us to the final thought on this architecture of solitude.
The extreme loneliness of Tokyo and Seoul harbors a cold, stark dignity. It represents a possible, if austere, endpoint for human social organization. Maintaining the final vestiges of civilization and respect through extreme self-discipline within a finite physical space.
It's where the neon-drenched, socially fragmented aesthetic of cyberpunk meets the deep-seated hierarchy-conscious order of Confucian tradition.
And the system's triumph is its sheer resilience. When the last 90-60 households' light finally goes out in the dark, the city's trains will still run on time, its streets will remain spotless, and its convenience stores will still glow.
A monument to a society that chose a precise, solitary stillness over a messy, interconnected vitality.